First, I want to point out that I do have a new website. This is my website and my website alone. I am not managing it with anybody else. It is just my website. I've worked really hard the past week and a half to put a bunch of content on that website, all about these things. You can skim through it and find a lot of answers that you might be looking for. Everything is linked in the description below. The articles page on my website about all this stuff is linked in the description below. You literally can just skim it and find exactly what you want. You can also buy this frame on that website, and it is in a small way an effort for me to try to make a little bit of money from doing all this stuff. I really enjoy doing it, and I would really appreciate the support. I hugely appreciate all of your support. Okay, moving on. So this is the Toothpick, and the point of this is for it to be super simple, super small, super light, super safe, and give you fantastic performance. Now, when I originally started, I was expecting to make it a 1S quad, but then I started testing 2S, and it's a whole lot better on 2S. However, I wouldn't recommend 2S around public people, areas where actual people are around. With 1S, it's really hard to hurt anybody, including yourself. You would literally need to run directly into somebody's eye to cause harm to them, even a child. The props don't spin fast enough to cause harm. You could literally stop the props on your skin from a full speed to a stop, and it does not cause any harm more than a little scuff on your skin. Also, before I get started, I need to give a lot of credit to RotorX. They are the ones that really pioneered this micro class. I met them back in late 2013, early 2014, and they have been doing this since 2013. I think maybe even late 2012. Like, it's crazy when they got started on these little micros. Back then, stuff was just garbage, and yet they were still building micros of this size. Along the years, I've built a lot of these things, and I've used a lot of components, and what's changed recently is that we've gotten a whole slew of these little 1S, 2S whoops, which are very, very different from the previous electronics. They actually work, and they're really, really unusually reliable. Specifically, the Crazy Bee board has been incredibly reliable for me. I put about 20 of them through absolute torture, and not a single one has failed. Yes, people have told me that they've lifted pads, burnt ESCs and whatnot, but everything does that to some extent. It's very unusual for me to use so many of one product and not have a failure. I really do punish these things to see what is and is not going to be reliable, because when I go out and fly, I don't have time to deal with failures, and everything about this build, everything about what I do is about something that is sustainable, something that is usable, something that I don't have to fiddle with and will just work for me. So before getting on about this, let's talk about the frame itself. This is the Toothpick frame, and you can see that the structure is very, very simple. There are two different versions. One version has the 4-hole motor mount, one version has a 3-hole motor mount. There are an incredibly few number of motors in this category that are actually good, and it's difficult to support all the motors, and that's why I have spent so much time trying to get these specifically motor mounts to work properly, because one thing about this micro class is that there are absolutely no standards. Companies seemingly do whatever they want, just willy-nilly, and they don't care. And so motors come in all sorts of different mounting platforms, from 9mm to 8mm to 7mm to M1.3 screws, M1.4 screws, M1.5 screws, 2mm screws, and 9mm and 8mm. It's just crazy the number of motor options. However, one thing is consistent, 4-hole and 3-hole, and the reason why there's 2 frames is because the most susceptible place that this frame is going to break, all frames of this size is going to break, is right here, where the motor mounts to the arm. And I have actually broken 5 of these frames like that right there, and I cannot even believe it, because I was flying these things with a sub 60 gram all-up weight, and I was still breaking. Specifically this one, I'm breaking this little edge, so the one that's actually going to ship has a way beefed up segment right there. Also, some body segments that I've been testing and trying to optimize. Overall, I designed this frame to be incredibly robust, and originally I was going to design it for 1S, and it does work fine on 1S. However, I did beef it up quite a bit for 2S. I'm expecting this class to run 2S almost exclusively, because it is just so much better than 1S. Aside from that, you can see that the frame is pretty darn simple. It is just 4 steel screws, not plastic screws. Do not use plastic screws. You will hate your life. You will hate yourself if you use plastic screws. Just stay away from plastic screws forever. Never ever use plastic screws. They will always break on you. They will make your day awful. Don't use plastic screws. These are steel 10.9 hardness screws. I don't care about the weight, because I cannot deal with the unreliability of plastic screws. Don't over tighten these screws, because even though they are strong, they're steel, they can snap. They're only 2 millimeters. The frame is very simple. It's just screws with a lock nut on there. You tighten it down, not too much because you're going to be spinning this, but you tighten it down and the screws kind of stand up on themselves. And then all you do is that you slip your flight controller over the top with the rubber grommets that are included in the flight controller. Now, the mounting pattern of this flight controller is very specific, and I had to ask Happy Model what the pattern was because, again, there are very few standards, and specifically Beta FPV does not use the same standard as Crazy Bee or B-Core or the other boards, which all seem to use about the same standard, which is 25.4 millimeters by 25.4 millimeters. I don't know why they use that size. They could have just made it 26 by 26. They just made everybody's life difficult because now when you make frames of this size, you can't actually get it to fit over those standoffs properly. Anyways, whatever. That's a problem for designers. Anyways, that's why there are 2 frame versions, and it's a very simple frame. There's a lot of information about all the components on my website. However, I will touch on a number of things. I haven't put everything on the website either. I don't remember a lot of this stuff. I really just wrote it from memory, and I'm just making this video from memory as well. This frame uses 450 milliamp 1S batteries. These are just Whoop batteries, the 40 or 75 millimeter Whoop batteries. They are not special batteries in any sense. However, I have found that the GNB batteries do generally perform a little bit better than Happy Model, Eoshin, Emax, all the other various batteries. So these batteries do give me about 20 seconds more flight time, 20-30 seconds more flight time, which is really nice. And talking about the flight time, what makes this so incredibly amazing is the props. These props are super duper special. They're the King Kong, originally made by somebody else, twin blades. They're super efficient, super good performance for something of this size, and that is what's magical about this quad. Without this prop, it does not perform well. I do have some prototype props coming from GemFan that they also have a version of this prop. And depending on which prop performs the best, that is going to be the one that I carry on my store. I'm also going to be carrying some of the best motors that I've found in my store as well. That will come in time. If you want to wait to order until I get those things in stock, if you're international, you can definitely do that because I will have them. I don't know when. I hope to have the motors before Chinese New Year as well as the props before Chinese New Year, but I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But getting on with this, the camera is very specific. So originally I thought that the Caddx camera that came on the trash can was going to be really awesome and the go-to camera for something of this size, but unfortunately this camera is just awful. While the sensor is super duper nice and it's super crisp and has great resolution, is great like light dark handle, like all the stuff is great about it. Unfortunately, it comes in 69 and 4.3, which is weird, but unfortunately the field of view on it is absolutely awful, especially the lens that it comes with. Even when you swap the lens out, because it is an M8 mount to something like this Foxeer 1.8 millimeter lens, it still does not give you the proper field of view that you want to see. So that's just really unfortunate. And the thing that really drives the nail through this camera's heart is that the sensor is so incredibly susceptible to vibrations. Just the slightest, even if you have smooth motors, you get just crazy jello, and it makes it almost unflyable. And talking about the jello, the most important thing about something of this size are the motors, and that the motors actually are smooth. And so I do not recommend the Racer Star motors. Unfortunately, the motors that come on the Mobula and the trash can are just the worst motors I have used. They have no consistency at all. The prop shaft diameters are all various sizes. The props sometimes don't even fit over those motors. I don't know how they can let motors get out of, I don't know how those things are even flying. Like, I'm surprised they're not just throwing props left and right willy-nilly, because the prop shafts are just so variable. They vary up to like almost 0.1 millimeters of variance in the prop shafts, and if you're using press fit props, that is a real issue. Let's talk about the props. Well, talk about the motors real quick. So the Mobula and trash can motors are really only useful for 1S. They are not really good on 1S either, and in general 1S kind of lacks punch, but I'll talk more about the motor sizes in 1S in a minute. Let's talk about the prop shafts. So the way you want your props to mount is that you need the prop to be about 0.05 millimeters smaller than the actual shaft. If you measure your shaft on whatever motor you're using, you will realize that it is not actually the size that they say it is. The shafts come in 0.79, 0.8, 0.85, 0.93, 1.11, 1.5, 1.48, 1.44. It's just unbelievable how lacking there are standards of motors of this size in this size class. However, whatever motor you use, unfortunately, you will need to make sure that it has a hole that's about 0.05 millimeters smaller. So you will probably need to pick up a drill bit of this size. However, like I said, I will be carrying specific motors that I think are very excellent on my website, as well as props that are specifically made to fit that motor on my website. So everything I do here is to make it easy for people to use. That is my goal. Easy, safe, fun, reliable, extremely excellent performance. That is always what I've wanted, and that is what I'm trying to achieve here. So Whatever you get on my site will be compatible and will work without fuss, without any kind of weird management. That is always what I've been driving from the very beginning. So moving on to the motors again, for 1S performance, the size motor that I found that's best for 1S performance is going to be the 0804 size in about 12,000 kV. That is going to give you the best 1S performance. 1103 is great for 2S. It's not that great for 1S. And the 0804 is extremely inefficient for 2S. So if you do want to run 1S, I would recommend going to a smaller motor. However, these specific Tachyon motors are not that great because they have a motor wire on them that is basically just an extension of the windings. So it has the copper wire with the enamel in there, which is really frustrating because you can't cut it and solder it because you got to get the enamel off the winding. To do that, you have to use an aspirin tablet and melt the aspirin tablet on top of just a total mess. So just stay away from motors with this crappy plastic PVC wires with the just stiff wiring. You just can't cut the motor wires. While I'm here, this version is a version that I designed, made for the Tiny Hawk. This is using the Tiny Hawk stack, and it puts the battery on top because I wanted to test and see if battery on top really makes a difference in things of this size. And even with something this light, it does make a pretty significant difference. Having the battery on top just makes everything so much well balanced, so much nicer to fly. However, getting something on top with a frame of this size in 2S without something like this really nice battery tray is incredibly challenging, and you're just going to be adding about 4 grams of weight. My best design is about 4 or 5 grams of added weight just to put the battery on top. I'm going to test it. However, I'm not hopeful that it's going to be great because adding 5 grams of weight to something of this size is pretty significant, and the maximum weight I would really recommend for something of this size on these specific props is about 85 grams. So keep that in mind when you're building this thing. You got to keep it really, really light for it to have good performance. Once you start piling on the weight, just like a 5-inch, you really start killing the performance very, very quickly. Moving on to the 1103 motors. Racer Star motors are garbage. Don't use Racer Star motors. Oh yeah, the Beta FPV motors, the 0802 Beta FPV motors are incredibly smooth. Like I said, smoothness is paramount for something of this size, or else you get tons of jello. You start getting ticking in your flight controller. The thing falls out of the sky because there's just too much vibrations. The Beta FPV 0802 seems to have a bearing in it. I haven't taken it apart to confirm that. However, it is so smooth, it would be shocking to me that if it didn't have a bearing in it. And I would highly recommend this motor for 1S. However, the motor wires are too short to reach. And about those motor wires that are too short to reach, this is the first one that I built, and I noticed that the wires were too short. The stock wires are too short to reach the pad and to the board and plug into the plug and still spin the prop, whatever. That's the reason why I made the race wire. So many people have asked me why I have race wire for something so small, and that's why. It's because extending these wires is incredibly frustrating, incredibly annoying. However, if you're going to be running these 0802 motors, you are unfortunately going to need to extend the wires yourself, because when I made the race wire, I made them a little bit too short. So the frames that you're going to be getting come with this race wire as well. However, any motor that you're going to be using off a stock whoop, around the 75mm whoop, be very cautious when you cut and solder your wires, because you need every single bit of that wire to actually reach the motor pad. Future versions, the next time I make a batch of whatever 1,000 of these little tiny boards, it will be a little bit longer. However, it works great. This board was actually engineered to function with the amps that we're going to be pushing, so that's why it's been very specifically engineered to function optimally with the amps that we're going to be pushing for the motors of this size. So moving on to the 1103 size, Racer Star motors are garbage. I do not recommend the Racer Star motors. The Racer Star motors that are a previous version, not this one, the ones without the little 4-hole pattern, they are almost okay, but they just lack in performance, and they still have very bad vibrations. The bearings that come in these Racer Star motors are just shot. They're just totally shot bearings right off the bat. So I don't recommend them at all. They're not worth the money. What I do recommend, I've tried a bunch of others, but let's just skip to what I do recommend. These Amox Eno motors are phenomenal. They are the best performing 1103 motors that I have used so far, and these are the motors that I'm going to be stocking in my store. I think that I can sell them for $10 a piece, maybe $11 a piece, and that is a really good price for motors that are so incredibly smooth, so powerful, so well balanced. Everything about these motors is great. The one thing that I don't like is that the prop shaft could be just 1 millimeter longer. However, this prop shaft is totally fine. I'm totally okay with it. It is a 1.44 millimeter prop shaft, so you will need a 1.4 millimeter drill to drill out your props if you're going to be using the original King Kong props. I do not recommend getting the ABS props or just props from any other company other than King Kong. King Kong is not a good company. It's an awful company. Everybody hates them. Even all the Chinese companies hate them. They copy everything. That's all they do is copy. However, This particular prop is fantastic, and they do have a couple other products that are okay too, but this particular prop is very, very good. So you do want to get the original King Kong prop if you're not going to be using the props that are going to be listed on my website, which will come from GemFan. Like I said, I'm getting some props made from GemFan that are, it's a tri-blade and a twin blade version, various materials. Okay, so the camera mount. The camera mount is the Bbrain V2 camera mount. This is the most reliable camera mount that I've used to date for any whoop. It doesn't break at all, ever. It's a molded camera mount. The camera fits in perfectly. It does also fit the Cadex EOS camera. It does also fit the Cadex EOS camera. However, you will have to just unscrew the lens and then pop the body into the mount and then screw the lens back on. It holds the mount really nicely. I mean, I'm out of breath. I don't know what else to talk about. Oh yeah, the one that has the Tiny Hawk version of this frame, I am not going to sell. I'm just going to sell a couple of them just for people that really want to try it, because the top mount is really nice. It's an unfinished frame. Like, the camera mount is just like a loop of carbon here that I just stuck the camera in and taped on top because I couldn't figure out any other way to mount it. You can't use the Tiny Hawk motors, unfortunately. These motors would be awesome because they have bearings. They are incredibly smooth also. They're 0802.5, which would be a fantastic size for this prop. They even have a good KV. Was it like 6,500, 7,500, 7,000? I think it's 7,500 KV. They're perfect. The KV, everything about this motor would be perfect if they made the prop shaft longer. Unfortunately, you can't fit the press fit props over this upright. It's just really unfortunate. I really wish that they would have made the prop shaft a little bit longer. Anyways, okay, I think I've gone over enough. If you've been watching the whole video, thanks for watching the whole video. I don't know if I said it yet, but it runs on little 450 milliamp batteries. The GNB batteries are some of the better batteries that I've used. The GNBs give me about 20-30 seconds more flight time than any of the other various brands, Happy Model, Eachine, Emax, all those other batteries. They're okay. The Emax ones are pretty good too, actually, but the GNB ones are just particularly better. You can run the 520 milliamps or the 600 milliamps. However, the flight time is already about 3.5 minutes. So with those batteries, you're just going to get a lot more flight time. You'll probably get 4.5 minutes on the 600, maybe 5 minutes of like actually flying, like ripping hard. These things are so efficient that you can like just hold wide open throttle and fly like a plane, like for a solid 2-3 minutes. It's really amazing. Okay, go to the website. If you have any questions, please put it in the description or the comments below. I am happy to answer everything that I can. However, I am just one person. I'm now managing a whole lot of things. I'll do my best to get to everybody, but the customers come first. People that order from my website, I am going to respond to them more than anybody else, and I'm doing my darndest to get the shipping system worked out and get everything smoothly, running very smoothly. I will be adding more products in the future. I do have some really interesting products coming up. One product in particular that's very big that I hope to be very proud of when it comes out, and I hope you guys will like it too. Anyways, thanks very much for watching. Take care. Thank you for your support. And please floss your teeth, because it's very important to floss your teeth. Please take care. Bye.